Everyone ready? Yes, Vaisheshika. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction of Sondukuti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. This manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form. But as I, who am the ritual, I, the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant, I am the butter and the fire and the offering. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I'm the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I'm also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajurvedas. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed. O Arjuna, I give heat, and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality, and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus those who seek enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. If one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do thou, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In this way you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me and this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly, because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, Merchas, and Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed to me, surely come to me. Adinath Krishna, which verse would you like to hear? 31, a wise choice. So we're continuing our investigation of the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll be reading from text number 31, which is as follows. Shripram bhavati dharmadma shashvach chantim nagachchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. Shripram means very soon, and bhavati means becomes. Dharmatma, righteous. Shashvat shantim, lasting peace. Nagachchati, attains. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti. Pratijanihi, declare. Na, never. Me, my. May, my. Bhakta, devotee. Pranashyati, perishes. Translation is as follows. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace, O son of Kunti. Declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. And here's Srila Prabhupada's purport for this verse. This should not be misunderstood. In the 7th chapter, the Lord says that one who is engaged in mischievous activities cannot become a devotee of the Lord. One who is not a devotee of the Lord has no good qualifications whatsoever. The question remains then, how can a person engage in abominable activities, either by accident or by intention, be a pure devotee? This question may justly be raised. The miscreants, as stated in the 7th chapter, who never come to the devotional service of the Lord have no good qualifications, as is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Generally, a devotee who is engaged in the 9 kinds of devotional activities is engaged in the process of cleansing all material contamination from the heart. He puts the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, and all sinful contaminations are naturally washed away. Continuous thinking of the Supreme Lord makes him pure by nature. According to the Vedas, there is a certain regulation that if one falls down from his exalted position, he has to undergo certain ritualistic processes to purify himself. But here, there is no such condition, because the purifying process is already there in the heart of the devotee, due to his remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be continued without stoppage. This will protect the devotee from all accidental fall downs. He will thus remain perpetually free from all material contaminations. I think a good companion verse for this in the Srimad Bhagavatam will be in the 1st canto, 5th chapter, Narada's instructions. And bear with me for a second because I have to see which verse it is. And the reason I'm looking for it is because of 17. That's a good guess. Is because of Prabhupada's mention of the natural process of purification. Remembering the Lord. And I'm going back to 17, albeit slowly. And that's not it. It's 19. And it goes like this. Navajano jatu katanjana vrajen mukunda sevan yavadan angasangsritim smaran mukundang rupaguhanam punar vihatamichen narasagrahojana. And the translation is, my dear Vyasa, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruitive workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. And this is Prabhupada's purport. A devotee of the Lord automatically becomes uninterested in the enchantment of material existence because he is rasa graha, or one who has tasted the sweetness of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. There are certainly many instances where devotees of the Lord have fallen down due to uncongenial association, just like fruitive workers who are always prone to degradation. But even though he falls down, a devotee is never to be considered the same as a fallen karmi. A karmi suffers the result of his own fruitive reactions, whereas a devotee is reformed by chastisement directed by the Lord himself. Hope you like that. The sufferings of an orphan and the sufferings of a beloved child of a king are not one and the same. An orphan is really poor because he has no one to take care of him, but a beloved son of a rich man, although he appears to be on the same level as the orphan, is always under the vigilance of his capable father. A devotee of the Lord, due to wrong association, sometimes imitates the fruitive workers. The fruitive workers want to lord it over the material world. Similarly, a neophyte devotee foolishly thinks of accumulating some material power in exchange for devotional service. Such foolish devotees are sometimes put into difficulty by the Lord himself. As a special favor, he may remove all material paraphernalia. By such action, the bewildered devotee is forsaken by all friends and relatives, and so he comes to his senses again by the mercy of the Lord and is set right to execute his devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that such fallen devotees are given a chance to take birth in a family of highly qualified brahmanas or in a rich mercantile family. A devotee in such a position is not as fortunate as one who is chastised by the Lord and put into a position seemingly of helplessness. The devotee who becomes helpless by the will of the Lord is more fortunate than those who are born in good families. The fallen devotees born in a good family may forget the lotus feet of the Lord because they are less fortunate, but the devotee who is put into a forlorn condition is more fortunate because he swiftly returns to the lotus feet of the Lord, thinking himself helpless all around. Pure devotional service is so spiritually relishable that a devotee becomes automatically uninterested in material enjoyment. That is the sign of perfection in progressive devotional service. A pure devotee continuously remembers the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna and does not forget him even for a moment, not even in exchange for all the opulence of the three worlds. I have one more verse to enter into evidence, and it's in the 11th canto, but you'll have to tell me what number it is. It starts, Swapada Mulam Bhajata Priyasya. What number would it be? 11.542. Pardon me? This is chapter 20. Chapter 5 from the first canto. Bhagavatam 1.5.19. Say what? What are you telling me, Mukharvinda? Thank you, sir. 11.542. Just now coming. That's it. Good to have you here, Mukharvind. Seriously. Okay. Swapada mulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha vikarma yachchot patitam katanchit dunoti sarvam hridisandivishta. So now after I finish reading this one, you tell me if you see how these verses thread together. Okay? Here are the word for word meanings for this verse. Swapada Mulam, the lotus feet of Krishna, the shelter of the devotees. Bhajata, who is engaged in worshipping. Priyasya, who is very dear to Krishna. Tyakta, giving up. Anya, for others. Bhavasya, of one whose disposition or inclination. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Para Isha, the Supreme Lord. Vikarma, sinful activities. Yat, whatever. Cha, and Utpatitam, occurred. Katanchit, somehow. Dhunoti, removes. Sarvam, all. Hridi, in the heart. Sannivishtaha, entered. One who has thus given up all other engagements and has taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to the Lord. Indeed, if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone's heart, immediately takes away the reaction to such sin. And here's your purport, written by the servants of Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, it was clearly described that a fully surrendered devotee of the Supreme Lord has no need to perform ordinary worldly duties. Now in this verse it is revealed that devotional service is so pure and potent that a surrendered devotee of the Lord has no need to perform any other purificatory process. As described in 6th Canto Srimad Bhagavatam, a surrendered devotee has no need to perform prayashchitta, or atonement for an accidental fall down into sinful activity. Since devotional service is itself the most purifying process, A sincere devotee who has accidentally stumbled on the path should immediately resume his pure devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord. And thus the Lord will protect him, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:30. Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhag sadureva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisaha. The word tyaktanya bhavasya in this verse is very significant. As stated in the previous verse, a pure devotee realizes clearly that all living entities, including Brahma and Shiva, are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus have no separate or independent existence. Realizing that everything and everyone is part and parcel of the Lord, a devotee automatically is not inclined to commit sinful activities by violating the order of God. However, due to the powerful influence of material nature, even a sincere devotee may be temporarily overwhelmed by illusion and deviate from the rigid path of pure devotional service. In such a case, Lord Krishna himself, acting within the heart, removes such sinful activities. Even Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, has no power to punish a surrendered devotee who has accidentally committed sinful activities. As stated here, Krishna is Paresha, or the Supreme Lord, and all secondary lords, such as the demigods, cannot threaten the Lord's personal devotees. In his youth, Ajamil had been a pious Brahmana, engaged in the service of the Lord. Then, by bad association with a prostitute, he became practically the most degraded man in the world. At the end of his life, Yamaraj sent his Yamadutas to drag away the soul of the sinful Ajamil. But the personality of God had immediately sent his personal associates to save Ajamil and demonstrate to Ajamil that no secondary personality can disturb the personal devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakti pranashiti. Bhagavad Gita 9:31. Sound familiar? The argument may be raised that the Smriti Shastra states, Shruti Smriti Mamaiv Vagnye. The Vedic scriptures are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one may ask, how can the Lord tolerate that his orders be occasionally neglected, even by his devotees? To answer this possible objection, please tell all your people to not fly by the microphone. Thank you. Thank you for considering my request. Therefore, one might ask, how can the Lord tolerate that his orders be occasionally neglected, even by his devotees? To answer this possible objection, the word priyasya is used in this verse. The devotees of the Lord are very dear to the Lord. Although the beloved child may accidentally commit an abominable activity, the loving father forgives the child, taking into consideration the actual good intentions of the child. Thus, although the devotee of the Lord does not try to exploit the Lord's mercy by requesting the Lord to free him from any future suffering, the Lord, by his own initiative, frees the devotee from the reactions to accidental fall downs. This causeless mercy of the Lord upon his devotee is his Parameshvaram, or supreme opulence. Gradually, the faithful devotee becomes free, even from accidental fall down. Because simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, what to speak of by actively rendering service to him, his heart is purified. Although the surrendered devotees of the Personality of Godhead may sometimes appear to be affected by mundane attitudes, they are inevitably protected by the merciful Lord and are never actually defeated in life. Now we could take some reflections or questions to expand the conversation. Yes, Yogadish.
Hare Krishna. From the Bhagavad Gita verse, there's a portion of the purport that I didn't quite understand. I was hoping you could explain. The purport describes, the question remains then, how can a person engage in abominable activities, either by accident or by intention, be a pure devotee? So it mentions an accident or an intention. The accident part, I think the other verses also corroborate that. For the intentional part, I didn't understand that as much. And the way I thought of it maybe was that it could be that a devotee might, to take a practical example, let's say someone's struggling with maybe alcohol, and they genuinely have the desire to actually stop, but they might have a weakness of heart, and they just go into it. In that sense, they might have an intention, but it's something they're just conditioned to. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. I don't know if that thought process was correct, or what was being meant there by intention versus accident.
Prabhupada was once asked to distinguish between the two, and he gave a simple answer. He said, if they come back, it was accidental. And I've seen, I should say, colleagues in devotional service who have deviated from devotional service in seemingly very deliberate ways for long periods of time, long chunks of time, and then have just come back to where they were before, albeit with some serious regrets for wasting a lot of time. So Prabhupada said, if they come back, it was accidental. And the example you gave is an example that Prabhupada has given in other places, describing how, because of the force of habit, of previous habits, he gave the example of smoking, and that somebody may have a lapse and be overcome by some urge that comes up and then feel overwhelmed by it. Did that help? Okay. Yes. We can't give credit without microphone.
What if they never leave Krishna consciousness or this association of devotees, but they are breaking regulative principles?
Well, then again, it has a lot to do with each individual's relationship with Krishna and with their own psychological conditions. And not what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva mohanir bhukta vajantimam drdavrata. And this verse can be interpreted that those who have a past lives and the life they're in now, in which their habits are more in the mode of goodness, may have an easier time of performing devotional service. It's one way that Prabhupada explains that verse. And some may be very sincere and may have been born into, even before they're born, they might have vibrations around them, or even babies can be intoxicated before they come out of the womb. So they come into a situation where their prarabdha may not be as favorable. So we may see somebody who has habits to overcome, but is very determined. And the point that Krishna makes in Apichet Sudharacharo, Vajate Mamanandibhak, is that if somebody is situated in their determination, that particular quality is very important. Did it answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And if as a guru, what would be your mood if some disciples are having trouble, and what would be your teachings to others in the community?
Well, that's why it's important to have a personal guru, because a guru means somebody who's grounded, or in other words, heavy, in the sense that he or she has been through a lot of stuff and worked it out in Krishna consciousness and become fully situated in their determination despite whatever they've been through in their lives, and therefore they can appreciate what others are going through as well. And they have a lot of experience. That's why. Nrideham adyam sulabham sudulabham plavam sukalpam gunakarnavarnarham. The Bhagavatam says you should get a captain who's been across the ocean more than a few times, if possible, so that that person can give you realized advice. And how would somebody deal with that is you have the person's best interest in mind and help whoever it is to get situated in such a way that they can improve themselves. So for instance, if somebody is initiated, they start the process and then they find out that they weren't as fixed as they thought, or at least that they feel like they're overcome by various desires. For instance, I have a godbrother who took initiation from Prabhupada, and then soon afterwards he went and talked to Prabhupada directly. He was in a position where he could do that alone, and he said, Prabhupada, I'm having a hard time following this principle and that principle. I think it was just this principle, not this and that. And Prabhupada's answer was, one day you will walk. And he said, just like a child in learning to walk gets up and then falls down again, and in the process of struggling to get up and stand up and walk, he develops his balance and the muscles to do so. And Prabhupada didn't go into a lot of detail about it, except for he just gave that analogy and said, one day we'll walk. And the person was so encouraged by that he kept trying to walk. And then he got his legs. And Prabhupada mentions in the light of the Bhagavat that missteps in devotional service may not be detrimental. Of course, this has to have a huge caveat umbrella over it, saying, as Prabhupada mentions subtly here, there's never an excuse to misuse this. Otherwise, you're committing the seventh offense. It's like, well, it doesn't matter because Krishna will make up for it. That in itself is disqualification. It really hurts one's chances to become steady. I wrote a seminar about how to make a comeback. In fact, the first time I wrote it, I called it The Anatomy of a Fall Down. And it was on a Wednesday night Gita class. And it was like 3 times as many people in the class say, what are you guys doing here? Oh, right, the title, right? And then it became How to Make a Comeback. It seemed more optimistic. Or I think I had to go somewhere where, it's just more appropriate. And some of the ways in which, it's used metaphor about how Maya knocks at the door. And if you're arrogant, or if you misuse the principle, then it invites Maya to come in. And then if you justify it, that's a real problem, because then you invite Maya to stay in your house. If you say, well, it's all right because, and it's better to be honest and own it. And Prabhupada mentions that, I'll read you at 331 in the Bhagavad Gita. A similar way of saying that. It's very similar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Here it is. In this verse at 331 says, Krishna says, those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. And here's Prabhupada's comment. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita, but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the pure stage of Krishna consciousness. There's a similar statement in the 11th canto Krishna makes where he says, Jata Shraddha Makatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu Veda Dukatmakam Kamams Parityage Pyanishvara Tato Bhajeta Mamprita Shraddha Lurjajanishjaya Jushamanams Tatam Kamams Dukodarkams Jagadayan. And there he describes a period, an interim period in devotional service when one's undergoing anartha nivriti, which is like trying to cross a big ocean, and it seems to be getting larger as one swims. And there he says, the person has faith in the process and knows and is disgusted with material sense gratification, and also knows that it leads to suffering. But still, parityage pyanishvara, ishvara means like the supreme control, but also in this context means the power to do something. So parityage means to give up those things. And parityage pyanishvara, he doesn't have the power to give it up yet. It's some weakness of heart. Tato bhajeta mamprita shraddharulurjananishchaya, similar from the verse Supadamulam bhajata priyasya. Krishna says you should know that you're dear to me because you're trying, and you should go on with the process. And then at the end he uses the word garayan, which means that you can be a little bit remorseful, but not so acutely that you discourage yourself from doing the process, because that's illegal also. You can't say, I'm permanently unqualified. That's another trick of Maya that Srila Vyasadeva eliminates for us in the Vedanta Sutra, when he says that everyone's an agent for change and can rise in due course of time. I'm just obviously fluffing out the sutra. Because the Vedas say to improve. And if we could improve, then what would be the use of those injunctions in the Vedas? So, what question am I answering? How to not judge people who are struggling? Well, I think to look at one's own problems and deal with those. That's something. It's in this book, The Last Instructions of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And one of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's disciples, Govinda Maharaj, used to say, people asked him, what is your religion? He said, my religion is finding my own faults and overcoming them. If you're entrusted with somebody who asks you for help, and then it's important to very objectively look at whatever issues the person's going through, and then find the ways and means to help the person to improve. And if they need an attitude adjustment, that can be part of it. If they have just ingrained physical habits, they may need some purification over time of their senses. There's a lot of different reasons, as we talked about before, that people may struggle. And then everybody with good association and help in going on hearing and chanting and so forth can, in due course of time, get more and more strength. And some people may do so kicking and screaming, or may have an opportunity in the next go around if they're not able. So we may come into this lifetime having performed devotional service previously, and then have purva samskars towards it, and then we may have another opportunity to overcome what we were not able to deal with the last time around. And think of Bharat Maharaj and the benediction he got. He was so close, and then he got distracted by a little deer. That seems like such a petty thing for a powerful yogi who's meditating in the wilderness and has achieved a modicum of success. More than modicum. He was emotional about God, and so that indicated that he had made a lot of advancement. But imagine waking up in the body of a deer and realizing that he had been that yogi in his last life. And Krishna helps us to say, you were so close, so why don't you give it another try? It's not that Krishna doesn't help us too. He wants us to succeed also. And of course, in any kind of vikarma, one who's intelligent will notice, even people who are not that intelligent may notice that there's an inordinate reaction for it. All I did was this, and now you got to deal with it for the rest of your life. It was just a momentary lapse, and wow. So I was reading in the Yoga Sutras, and one of the commentaries about how yogis are really careful of hladini samskars. They try to, this is not necessarily our path to avoid the world in such a way, because we engage everything in Krishna's service. But just the principle they were, in the commentary was saying, they're especially wary of peak experiences and pleasure in the material world because they know that they become indelible. And it's really hard to get rid of them afterwards. And so it says they're as sensitive as an eyeball. And then the rhetorical question comes, what do you mean as sensitive as an eyeball? He said, well, the eyeball's so sensitive that if any little piece of dust gets in there, then it becomes intolerable. So he said they know how the interaction with the material world can lead to a long-lasting, sticky samskar that it's hard to get off. So they're really careful. I think devotees also who have matured have been through circumstances where they've seen how the reaction comes by Krishna's mercy, and then they're really careful not to do it again, because they know it's hard to shake off. If it was really easy, you just say, oh yeah, that was no big deal, let's shake it off. And then you realize it persists and persists and persists, and you think, maybe it's not a good idea to look at certain things or touch certain things. Better stay fixed on the Bhagavatam and your service and things like that, and be really careful. Don't mess around. What was that song?
Don't fool around.
Yeah, but what was the artist's name? I forget his name. I was quoting it during the youth yatra. Elvin Bishop, he sang this song that said, I fooled around and fell in love. And it's fooling around in the material world is not a good idea. So you might fall in love with something, and then first law of buying a car, I learned it first car I ever bought, which was after I joined the movement. It brought a really crummy car, a Fiat. And I think it only cost a few $100s. In any case, the article I read said, don't fall in love with the car because it won't love you back. In the case of the material world, it's booby-trapped. If you touch something, like my parents used to tell us when we were on vacation, we were driving, we'd be out in the middle of the desert or something, there's some gift shop with all these crystals in it or something like that. And it said, there'll be a sign there. If you break it, you buy it. Or they said, don't touch anything in the store. Don't even touch it. And that's the material world. You touch it,